What's the stupidest thing you ever said, that genuinely made you question your intelligence? If there are adult diapers, why aren't there adult strollers? My husband, looking at me like he regrets ever meeting me. You mean wheelchairs? I used to use one of those original large-wheeled strollers. I could just squeeze in, put my kid on my lap, and use the wheels like a wheelchair. My kid thought it was fun as hell, but strangers looked at me with great concern. You hit me in the cervix. I am a man. I meant sternum. Still have to shake that memory out of my head sometimes. Thank you for your cervix. Always glad to be of cervix. I was on a long train trip, gazing out the window, when I said to my friend, I feel like every railroad crossing gate we've passed, since I've been looking, has been down. What are the odds? I have a PhD, not in trains. I worked on the railroad doing track maintenance. Every now and then, upper management would travel by in a pickup modified to run on the rails. Which meant, we had to move all tools, and get out of the way, to allow them to pass. Word would come over the radio. Word came down, that the bigwig was irritated, that every time he came by, we were just standing around by the track. My manager's manager asked me to ballpark the percentage of time I was spending on each of my 3 projects. I confidently told him, 75% on Project A, 25% on Project B, and 25% on Project C. I heard my cubicle neighbor laughing, didn't immediately click that she was laughing at me. Manager's manager paused a moment, then in a very kind and patient voice, like he was speaking to a Labrador with a learning disability, so, I'd like those numbers to add up to 100%. Can you try again? Then, it dawned on me. I don't know if this counts, because praise the Lord, I did not say it aloud. The scene, me, a college senior, still living in a dorm, doing my weekly snacks and root beer run, at the local Walmart. The thought, man, how do people, with a whole family, grocery shop? Like, what do you do, if you buy more than you can fit in your arms? Carts. That's what carts are for. There's a story, that's how shopping carts were invented. Some store owner noticed people stopped shopping when they had more groceries than they could carry, so he figured, if they had something to carry a lot of groceries in, they'd buy more, and they did. Years ago, a coworker and I were discussing how many Japanese people apparently have a KFC dinner for Christmas. We then wondered, what do they do for Thanksgiving? And began attempting to Google it. Spent quite a few minutes trying to search it up, remarking to each other in confusion that we couldn't find anything at all. I then realized how incredibly stupid we were. I'm not originally from the US, and every year someone feels sorry for me for not being able to spend Thanksgiving with my family. When I explain that my country doesn't have that holiday, they feel even worse for me that I grew up without Thanksgiving. I lived in Texas, and people would say, how do you celebrate Thanksgiving in New Zealand? And I would say, back then, we were kinda short on Indians and pilgrims, plus our harvest is in a different part of the year. Basically, mental overloaded most people. Okay, here goes. I was going to be late for my psychology class. The teacher had already warned me not to be late. What do I see in my rearview mirror on the way to class? You guessed it, I was speeding, and it was police lights. So, I pull over, and I give the officer my driver's license, registration, and insurance papers, and he seemed very friendly and nice, and he says, I will be right back, pure Goldie. That's when I got real dumb. I said, oh, by the way, will you write me a note for my teacher? I've already been warned not to be late today. I know this is making me late, for sure. He replied with a big smile, oh, I am going to write you a note, alright. Yep, I was that dumb. Back when I was working my first job at a McDonald's, during high school, I was maid manager, and one of my coworkers was a guy named Miles. We called him Kilometers, because such original joke. Anyway, one day I was grabbing a drive-thru order, while also trying to stock stuff, and I noticed we were out of napkins, so, what I meant to say was, hey Miles, can you go grab us some napkins, from the back real quick? What I actually said was, hey napkins, can you go grab us some stuff from the back, real quick? And everyone stared in silence. After a few seconds, Miles realized I was looking at him when I said it, and said, did you just call me napkins? My brain went over what I just said, as the embarrassment sat in, and I just answered, yes. Yes, as a matter of fact, I did. His nickname was no longer Kilometers. He was Napkins, from that day on. This one still haunts me. I once was having surgery, and in walks the anesthesiologist to ask me questions, and see if I had any for him. I said, just two. Do people dream? And he responds, not usually. What's your other question? And I said, is it normal to be afraid I won't wake up? And he goes, I promise you will. Me, well, I bet I won't. I bet I won't. I bet the anesthesiologist I was going to die. Like a effing idiot. Had a friend in college, whose sister was taking an ASL course. He started asking a question, and I tried so hard to stop him, because I could see the wheels spinning in his head. He asked, so, can you read Braille? This reminds me of the No Stupid Questions post asking how to talk to blind people. I know there's Braille. But do I simulate it by clicking my tongue? I was at a job interview for a baking job. The interviewer asked me if I know how to bake. I told her, no, but I can read. Meaning, I can follow the directions of a recipe. I was at home in my apartment alone, and cleaning up, and realized I hadn't plugged the vacuum in. Come on, John, I said out loud to myself, which was weird, since I never talked to myself out loud, and the worst part was, it came out, come on Janon. Like, how do I call myself by name, and then pronounce it wrong? I once couldn't figure out why my new power strip wasn't working. I got an extra long corded one in, plugged all my stuff in, it wasn't working. Not only wasn't it plugged into the wall, I plugged the power strip into itself. It was years ago, and I was waiting tables. A lady came in and asked for a hot Diet Coke. I asked how the F I was supposed to make her a hot Diet Coke. She told me to put it in the microwave. My response verbatim: but the ice will melt. Years ago, I was watching a rugby game with 4 or 5 others in my flat, over a few quiet beers. The game was being commentated by a sort of famous ex-rugby player, who was known for weird verbal gaffes, accidental, double entendres, and misspeaking. Some amusing examples I found: your first instinct, when you see a man on the ground, is to go down on him. Andy Ellis, the 21-year-old, who turned 22, a few weeks ago. And, it's all tied up at 14 to 13. Anyway, after having a laugh or two at his expense already, he said something along the lines of, this game is being played at a frenetic pace, which I, and I alone, laughed heartily at. Frenetic, I said loudly, in case the others hadn't quite twigged. Did he mean frantic? Or energetic? God, pick one, man, ha. No one really said anything, and I got the funny feeling I just made a twat of myself. Fortunately for me, the commentator soon made another gaffe of some sort. For example, strangely, in slow motion replay, the ball seemed to hang in the air for even longer, and everyone forgot and moved on. I quietly looked the word up and realized I got taught a word that night that means fast and energetic. It's been over 20 years, and I've long since lost touch with those guys, but I still remember. Huh? It's funny, I haven't ever seen a Bruce Willis movie. You haven't seen Die Hard? Oh, wait, yeah, I did see Die Hard. Sixth Sense? Oh, yeah, that too. Fifth Element? Armageddon? Silence. Turns out, I've seen a lot of Bruce Willis movies. Me, to the lady that I thought looks like me, as I was in passing, oh hey. It looks like we could be twins. My reflection. It had been a long shift. Me, crossing the border from Mexico to California. Border Patrol guy. What is your country of origin? Me, thinking, that's easy. Meet a border guard, California. Guy gave me a look for a moment, and then just said, go. Kind of related, friends and I went to Canada for a bachelorette party just a couple years after 9/11, so, when we were coming back to the US, security was pretty tight. I was massively hungover, and ready to just get home already, so, I handed the border patrol officer all our IDs and whatever, and took my foot off the brake, thinking I had put it in park. Nope. I started to roll forward, and everyone starting flipping shit, like 10 guards out of nowhere descending on my car. Needless to say, they made us all get out, and searched the car, for like an hour. Took quite a while to live that one down. That was 20 years ago. One time I was driving through a checkpoint, Border Patrol in San Diego, and the agent decided my 22-year-old son looked suspicious, and started asking more questions, starting with, "What are you doing in this area?" Answer, "I live about a mile from here," ending with, "Where were you born?" My son said, "Oregon," and the agent said, "What? What are you doing here?" I guess he never heard of moving to a different state. My boss asked me to print an address label for some documentation they had to mail out. My printer was out of ink, so I told her I was unable to print said label/mail the document out in time. She then explained that I could just write it by hand. SMRT. What's a chocolate bar? A lady told me that she loved chocolate bars, and I pictured a bar that serves chocolate instead of booze for a moment, and then I felt very stupid. I just had a brilliant business idea. We actually had something like that where I lived during my undergrad. It was chocolate and alcohol. It was called the Chocolate Bar. Unfortunately, no longer in business. That place was fantastic. Ordered a burger with no onions, then onions rings, because I don't like onions. The look the waitress gave me was priceless. She said, "I think you maybe just don't like onions raw." Yeah, that's what I said. I don't like onions. Argued with her for 5 minutes, and couldn't understand why she was questioning if I wanted onions on that burger. I was in grade 1, had a Canadian girl come to my school, sprung up a friendship. Looked her dead in the eyes and asked, "What swear words do you know in Canadian?" She tried to tell me multiple times it was the same words, and I refused to believe her. I toss and turn at night, knowing she probably tells people that now. When planning a trip to America, I was very confused as to why Google Maps was refusing to give me a walking route to the Statue of Liberty. Turns out, you can't walk to the Statue of Liberty because it's in the water. That's a lot better than the people who think they're gonna visit Disney World and Disneyland in the same day by driving. My friend from the UK was visiting Miami. She called and asked if me and my sister wanted to meet her for lunch, but we live in Tampa. I had to tell her I didn't really feel like driving 6 hours for lunch, then driving 6 hours back home. Garbage truck drivers must have the chilliest job in the world. They only work 1 day a week. Me, for the first 16 years of my life. When my brother was a kid, he wanted to be a garbage truck when he grew up. Not a garbage man, a garbage truck. He apparently thought this was a possibility. I was watching a TV show, can't remember what, with my family. There was this cute black girl who appeared in a scene and had a nice, short hairstyle I thought was cool. I said out loud, if I was black, I would have my hair like that. I am a black guy. I meant to say girl. Asked a server at a Mexican restaurant if their quesadillas had cheese in them. In front of my Mexican-American grandfather. He very patiently asked me what the Spanish word for cheese was, and then I realized my mistake. For years, I thought queso cheese was the Velveeta/salsa concoction. Recently realized I've effectively been saying cheese for years. About 10 years ago or so, I was at a restaurant and went to the restroom. I told my mom and daughter, when the waitress comes back, can you have her bring some more ice? My water is too watery. My family does not let me forget. One time I was in the grocery store, and a couple were in front of the jar of pickles I wanted to get. They noticed me standing there, and said, "Oh, are we in your way?" They moved, and I grabbed the jar. I then turned to them and said, "Thanks." Then for some reason, I'll never understand, added, "I like pickles." They must have been thinking, well, it's nice that they let him do his shopping on his own. Was really blanking on this casual friend's last name. I talked to them pretty regularly and everything. But I was just blank. Wouldn't come to me, so had to go to Facebook and look it up. We have the same last name. I forgot a friend's wife's name, and we were at a party, and I asked him to remind me of her name. He said, "You were joking, right?" His wife and I have the same first name, and I blanked on it. Recently I rattled off something I'd read on the internet to my mom. We were looking at military-style clothes that have the button straps on the shoulders. I said, it was really neat that those were for carrying your bags. She looked at me and said, they were for holding your bars, if you were high-ranking. I don't know why, I believed even for an instant that shoulder straps would be able to carry 100-plus pound bags. Playing table tennis with my partner, and having the absolutely phenomenal brainwave of, hey, wouldn't it be cool if this was like a game that was way bigger with a big net, and you have to like run around to get the ball, and, oh, wait, that's just tennis. This the same week, and I was holding my daughter up in front of a low fish tank, so I was squatting down and thought, it would be so helpful if someone could like something sturdy to push under you while you squat, to make it more comfortable. Oh, wait, that's literally a chair. Back in high school, we were learning about angular measurements. The teacher explained that the three main units were degrees, minutes, and seconds. He explained that there were 60 minutes to a degree, and then moved on. I raised my hand, we did that in those days, and asked, how many seconds in a minute? To which both the teacher and the rest of the class looked at me like I was an idiot. In my defense, I thought that maybe angular minutes and seconds might have a different relationship to temporal minutes and seconds, and we couldn't just assume that they were the same. This happened in 1979, and I still think about it occasionally and cringe at the thought.